Hi, my name is Kirkland Hall. This is my week 3 video summary. I did 2 articles this week. First, I want to start with the article, Who is a God Like You? Theological Themes in Micah by Kevin Peacock. This was in the Southwestern Journal of Theology. Actually, both of the articles this week were actually inside of the Southwestern Journal of Theology. And Peacock introduces his article with the question raised by his high school physics teacher, and it gives us the basis of his work. And she asks, or he asks, describe the universe and give 2 examples. Now, that question was in relation to the topic of this actual article. Who is a God like you? And the answer is that there is none like God in his power, in his holiness, in his wisdom, or in his matchless grace. Kevin Peacock concludes that the incomparable sovereignty of God is the starting point, working point, and ending point of Micah's theology. And that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at Micah's theology. So the article shows many people present God as bipolar because he's someone who acts out in his holiness, or sometimes he acts out of love. But according to Micah and according to this, that's a false dichotomy. You see, the writer says that he's holy love. So while focusing on God's sovereignty, Micah's second foundational truth is the responsibility of all people to this sovereign God. Meaning they're responsible to God to live holy and how they treat others. The article then evaluates David Dorsey's argument of the final literary structure of the final form of the book of Micah. So in chapter 1, you have the coming, defeat, and destruction. In chapter 2, you have the corruption of the people. In chapter 3, the corruption of the leaders. Chapters 4 through 5, you have the glorious future restoration. Chapter 6, you have the corruption of the city and its leaders. 7, you have another version of the corruption of the people. And then finally, in 7 and 8, you have the future reversal of defeat and destruction. We do find that the book of Micah is actually not chronologically set, but it's thematically set. So the message of destruction and punishment is actually balanced by the message of rebuilding and forgiveness. And that's what the book is balanced. So you have the destruction, but then you also have the building. You have the sin, but then you also have the grace. And that was the book of Micah. Then I also read the article, The Remarkable Suffering Servant of Isaiah, chapters 40 through 55. This was by Robert Ellis, also in the Southwestern Journal of Theology. Now, he opens with the description of the word servanthood. He uses a couple of scriptures, and he uses that pericope, and he mentions a servant of Yahweh who labored on a divine mission to Israel and the Gentiles, innocently suffering on their behalf. Now, the main idea of this particular article is to summarize the servant's character and career with a view to answer the question of his identity. So what he does is he looks at 4 of the songs, and we'll start with the first suffering song in chapters 42, verses 1 through 4. The servant is one who is chosen and empowered by Yahweh to establish his truth in the earth. And in accomplishing that task, he will display extreme gentleness and enduring patience. And that's the kind of the summary of what the writer portrays this servant in this particular pericope is defined as. And then in the second song, which is Isaiah 49 verses 1 through 6, the article shows that the servant is called by the name of Israel, and it illuminates him as an aggressive spokesperson for God. And it also indicates the servant's frustration over the failure of his mission. What mission is that? That mission was the restoration of Israel, the glorification of Yahweh, and communication of Yahweh's salvation to all the earth. Then as we keep going, the third suffering song paints a picture of the servant as a disciple of Yahweh who obediently listens and speaks a message which helps the weak. The song also shows the intensity of persecution of the servant and the how he was persecuted and all the persecution that he endured and the confidence that he had in God's help. So he was persecuted, but he had confidence in God's help. Then finally, the writer Ellis shows that the fourth song indicates the extent and the effect of the servant's suffering and his final fate. So the beginning and the end of the suffering servant. It also shows that because of his vicarious life and death, that the servant will experience exaltation as a reward from Yahweh. And so finally, in conclusion of this, the writer examines a study while looking at the servant's song. He tries to answer the question of what is the identity, or who is the identity of this servant. And Ellis ends, I love this, because Ellis ends by saying that, and I quote, "All the Old Testament offices of Yahweh's redemptive activity are united in Jesus Christ. While many descendants of Abraham have served in the roles of king, prophet, and priest, Jesus alone has fulfilled the portrait of the remarkable suffering servant of Isaiah chapter 40 through 55. And if I were to say anything, I would say, is there any better Christophany than Isaiah 40 through 55? Have a great week.